G'day folks, I'm here with Chris Finlay. He's my guinea pig for the first ever episode of A Day on the Water With. Now we've done this a little bit different. We've actually come down to the Clarence for about 5 days, so we've done some filming and to put with the interview today. Chris and I have known each other for a number of years now through the ABT tournament, so about 10 years, and we actually met on the Clarence that time ago, wasn't it? So Chris, where to start? So Chris, come across on the ditch from New Zealand. How long have you been over for?
Roughly 40 years.
So almost done your apprenticeship now. Now this is a fishing podcast, so we're going to delve into the mind of Chris Finlay and what makes him tick a little bit. So I guess I'll start way back when. What was your first fishing memory?
One of the first ones was with an uncle in fishing the Rakaia River, which is just south of Christchurch. Went out in his jet boat chasing salmon. I would have been 9 years old. He gave me a fishing rod with a spinner on it, just a spoon spinner, and we were chasing Atlantic salmon, or the New Zealand river salmon, and was lucky enough to hook a 25 pounder, which almost ripped my arms off. And all the other boats all the other jet boaters and that were around chasing the salmon they were big rounds of applause and everything else. And it fed us in fresh salmon for probably about 6 months.
And was that the moment when you went, this is pretty cool, I like this?
Yeah, it was that. Plus I used to, just close to home, there's the Waimakariri River and the Styx River. I used to go down there just chasing trout and spearing freshwater eels, go down there in bare feet, walk in the river, the gravel river, get eels up to 6 foot long and spear them with a spear, using a spotlight usually at night.
Nice. So fast forward, now based in Sydney.
Yes.
Now you've been on the ABT tour for some 12 years or so. Now I know you've had a number of top 10s, but at one stage you were ranked #1 in Australia, which is a pretty cool feat. So we want to talk a little bit about ABT and your tournament angling a little bit later on, but leading up, what led you into tournament angling? I started watching when they had the original AFCs on TV. I've always been when I lived in Manly in Sydney, I'd go fishing with friends with bait fish. Then one of them got into soft plastics, and I sort of went, I don't think this is really going to take off. But after that, I saw some hard-bodied lures, and I'd just go down and muck around with them. But then I started watching AFC and other fishing shows, and it was starting to take off. And I always thought that would be great to maybe get on TV, fish on AFC. And Steve Morgan at the time, who was running the events, he turned around and said, the ABT is a feeder. And I looked more into it and went, I'll give it a go. All right, so you've been hooked by AFC. Where was your first event?
Clarence River.
The Clarence River, right here.
Yes.
And of course, some people may not know about ABT, but you fish as a non-boater and you're paired with 2 different boaters each day. Who were your boaters on that day, on that weekend?
Day one was a guy from the Gold Coast. I only still remember him from his nickname, Chainsaw.
Mark Lawson.
Mark Lawson.
Yep.
And second day, I had a guy from Taree whose name escapes me, but he was actually leading after day one. It was actually the first event I was in was the Super Series.
Right, so that was back in the days. So I think the non-boaters fished 2 days, and then the boaters went out for the third day for $10,000.
Yeah.
So yeah. Righto, so you fished your first ABT event. How'd you find the experience? Was it like, hell yeah, I want to keep going back and doing more, or just sort of to take some time before you get on fishing them?
Well, with all ABT events, they usually run once a month. My first one, I didn't do that well, but the experience was really good. The people I met were pretty impressive. People like Peter Maycor, Warren Carter, a few of the other non-boaters, a couple of the boaters that I fished with. It was good. But it was a learning curve. It's a steep learning curve because, as I said, my first one was one of the old Super Series, which was the boaters were getting $10,000 first prize.
So a lot of pressure on them, a lot of,
It was very cutthroat. It was a lot of the non-boaters not really getting the cast because, as it is, the boaters wanted the cash.
Yeah. But you came back and how long, I guess, was it before you sort of started seeing the results and your first podiums and that kind of stuff that come along?
It was after the first year. Well, I didn't fish every event the first year. I fished about 3 events, I think. Then I came back the next year, learnt a lot more, learnt different river systems. And I remember fishing the Tweed River, and I was waiting to get on one of the boats. I'd finished the first day, and Jim Hickson actually came past and said, "How'd you go?" And I said, I donutted again. And he turned around and Pete Morgan was there, that's Steve and Tim Morgan's father, and said, "I did 15 events before I actually caught a fish." So I didn't feel as bad, but the learning curve was just phenomenal. Compared to just going out social fishing, it's being in that environment and only having basically 6 hours to catch your fish.
Yeah.
Once I did get to dial that in, it became it started about the third year when I really started to see results. I was catching fish, but getting those placings up in the top 10, but it's just, some people are just lucky.
And you've got to adapt, right? You're at the back of the boat. You may or may not get a cast, so you've got to go, okay, well, if I can't cast there, what am I going to do? So you've got to be, and that would be a big part of what you're learning as well.
It is, especially if the guys are running the side of a riverbank and all you've got is deep water to fish. So you're not really getting a cast at the edges.
Yeah.
And it was about the third year that I actually bought my own tinny. I didn't use it in events, but it was just to get out on the water and practice what I'd learnt.
So you're established in the ABT family, as we like to call it, now. Did you travel to many venues? Did you sort of, that's I think one of the advantages of being a non-boater is you can sort of fly in and get to experience some of those fantastic fisheries, or where have you fished?
It's actually quite funny that I fished basically all over Australia, but at one stage during weigh-ins, Simon Goldsmith used to turn around and said the most travelled non-boater in ABT. I've been to WA, to Albany, to the Blackwood River over there, down to Mallacoota, Bem River, Gippsland Lakes, St Helens in Hobart in Tasmania, the Derwent, the Clarence, Tweed, the Gold Coast, Bribie Island.
And each system is unique and different, so, and not on top of that, targeting different species, yellows and blacks.
I actually, between the two, yes, I live around Sydney. I fish Sydney Harbour, Hawkesbury and all those. I actually love catching the black brim but more.
Okay, leads me to my next question. Favourite venue? What's your favourite area that you fished?
I'm going to have to say Mallacoota. If I could have got there this year to do the ABT, I probably would have. I would have done it in a heartbeat, but I've been basically retired from the ABT for 2 years.
Righto, so obviously fishing in all those different venues, you've had to experience and fish with lots of different boaters. Who's your favourite? Who's the best?
Best boater that I fished with, which taught me the most, would be Wayne Freebs at Malakuta. First time I went there, he showed me parts of those lakes that were just, they stick with me even now. I can go to those spots from my own GPS in my head.
And he's a funny man, so I know that it was a very enjoyable day on the water.
It was an awesome day.
You've got one lure to go and fish an event. What are you tying on?
The one brand of lure that I would use would be, and I'm not sponsored by them, but they work everywhere in Australia, would be Jackal. The chubbies, the Colt Minnows Malakuta, the Jackal, the chubbies, any system, anywhere all the way up to Gladstone, and any of their colour range.
If you had to give anyone out there that is contemplating fishing an ABT event, what piece of advice would you give them?
Be respectful to your boaters and always make sure that you offer them some money for fuel. And if they won't take it, some people won't take your money, but just be respectful to them. They're the guys that you are being guided for 2 or 3 days on the water, depending on the events.
Who is the greatest of all time? Who is your number one ABT angler? Includes ASC, all that kind of stuff.
I would say Chris Wright. He was a pioneer in the sport. He won a lot of events and a really nice guy, and really showed what ABT should be like.
Now we've just fished the last 4 and a bit days on the Clarence. Yeah, they're going to see a fair bit of footage of you catching fish and that kind of thing. So, but run us through the gear that you obviously brought with you, but also that you would use that in comps as well. So, run us through what what gear you're running. So,
well, I don't run just one rod. I've picked rods that have worked in every event. I've got a Lox rod, that one there.
Yep. What weight?
What weight? It's a 1 to 3 kilo.
Yep.
The next one is a Samaki Zinger Extreme. That one there's a 1 to 3. And the last one is a Patriarch rod from Fluger with a Patriarch reel with it. If I'm going to any event anywhere in Australia, that's what I'll use. You don't need to go heavy. I've used the Lox around oyster racks.
All right, Chris, thank you for being my guinea pig. I'm going to edit this up and see what we can put together and see where we can take this thing. I don't know if it'll take off, if it's what people want to listen to or whatever, but we'll give it a crack, eh? And it's been great to catch up. It's been a little while, I think last year, about July, May, probably May, we caught up, but yeah, it's been great to spend some time in the water.
That was at Ballina.
It was, yeah.
And then came down here for a 1-day event.
We did. And yeah, so it's been great to catch up, spend some time in the water. I've learned a bit more again. You showed me a few little tricky spots, so it's been good to learn that. But you know, just out in the water with a good mate, really good times.
Thank you.